I'm StevIe Mclean. I'm a stage manager and backline tech for various different bands. Currently, I'm working with Gerry Cinnamon and Slaves. Basically, I've toured full time for five or so years now. I tour in a couple of different roles. It varies depending on who I'm working with and what sort of shows we're doing. But basically, my main sort of role would be to oversee the running of the day, make sure it's run smoothly. Bands are on, the support bands are there working, getting on stage on time, overseeing the maintenance instruments, just the kind of general running of the gig. Sort of being on top of just fixing things that go wrong day to day. Things break, and just kind of maybe a general handyman with a bit more specialist instrument skills, depending on who I'm working with.
So we're going to start right at the beginning and a little bit about what we previously discussed. So how was your journey? How did your journey into the music industry actually begin?
I've got kind of a strange one. It comes about in a bit of a circle. I always wanted to be music. I was obsessed with it when I was young. Maybe like I remember hearing the Smiths for the first time when I was like 12 or 13, maybe a bit older, maybe 13, 14, and like from then on in, that was me. And then just kind of went down my own kind of journey. But school was kind of told not to bother, to find something else. So I went to university in Southampton to do marine biology. Finished, didn't necessarily want to do it, but I felt like it was the best opportunity to finish and get through it, just not waste what I'd already done. I came back, started working at call centre, and then decided that I wanted to work in music more and more. And I thought, this is, I was young, I was 21, 22, and I thought, this is my one chance to do it. I'm not going to do this when I'm 45. I'm not going to get the opportunity just to go into it. So I just started becoming friends with some people through Glasgow who were in bands, and they started getting some gigs, and I went along. And I with the vaccines at the Corn Exchange in Edinburgh with a band called Baby Strange. And I just remember watching the guys doing the guitar changes and, all that sort of bits and bobs. And I was like, that's really fascinating. That's really interesting. I could really find something, I could really see myself liking that. So I kind of decided to do it, and I started kind of helping out smaller bands in Glasgow. Went along, just going along, almost volunteering, basically, just to do stuff with no real idea what I was doing. I think I'd probably tuned the guitar like once or twice in my life by this point. So I went to a charity shop and I bought a guitar, and I literally stripped it to bits. I just pulled it out and I ripped it apart. And it took me about 8 months to successfully build it till it worked. But I got there. But a lot of learning, a lot of YouTube videos and, following through and books and stuff and reading, and got there. And then basically I was lucky in some senses. Some of the bands I was working with started getting a bit bigger. I got to meet other people, kind of strong networking skills. I've always been good at that. And that kind of drove me in. I got a couple of bigger breaks, where some stuff worked out in my favour. Further down the line, just some people needed people at the right time. And fortunately, I got a good reputation and, kind of created a good, I suppose reputation is the best word for myself. And they asked me to do it, to come and cover some stuff. Literally both of the full-time jobs I've had, proper full-time jobs, have been covering for a month, and then they've just decided, let's keep this guy on, and I've got to go and do amazing things with him. So yeah, amazing. That's kind of how I got in and continued.
Wow. It is very much by chance, which is great, but also at the same time, you never know what might actually happen. But it's good to hear that obviously it actually did work out in your favor.
Yeah.
So this is always the sort of fun question whenever you end up talking about people about music and stuff. It's like, who have you worked with? Who have you not worked with?
I know. I forget sometimes. So I'm quite lucky. I've worked with quite a few people. A lot of it's been, like I said, covering one-offs, and here and there, and doing some odd shows. And then I've had 2 bands who have been proper full-time for me. Or sorry, 1 solo artist in a band. So currently for the last, I would say 18 months, not including COVID. So say 16 to 18 months before it, I've been full-time with Gerry Cinnamon as a stage manager and guitar tech. And then before that, I was full-time with Slaves as their drum tech, guitar tech, and stage manager, and different guises, different, depending on what sort of show we were doing. We had extra crew that came in and did the drums, and I just did guitars. On some of the smaller stuff, I was doing everything. but other than that, I've worked some amazing bands over the years. I've done Amazing Snakeheads, Baby Strange, Tijuana Bibles, even did Crash Club at one point. I'm trying to think else. I've done Lewis Capaldi. I actually did Lewis Capaldi's first ever show with a band at Transmit, which was quite an experience. That was a long time ago. That was like when he was very much, I think Bruises was out, and it was like putting him. This is before he was the biggest thing in the world, but he was going to be the biggest thing. Yeah. So that's a pretty special experience. I'm fortunate as well. I've toured. I've done quite a few good support tours where I've been out on, with Kasabian and The Prodigy, different bands like that. But I have worked with quite a few over the years. But certainly Slaves and Gerry have been my main focus for the longest part of my career.
Honest to God, it totally is like the smallest world, because we have spoken to Carlo. Yeah. Obviously about his experience in bands, and we were sort of reminiscing when we were both at uni when obviously their band went on tour with Slaves as well. Yeah, I remember the lecturers were giving him a bit of hell because he was like, I'm away for 2 weeks, I'm sorry, I'm away on a tour, and they were like, where's your coursework? Like, this is unacceptable. And he's like, I've tried my best, but look, I'm on tour, I'm in a music course, guys, I'm doing what you want me to do. And they were like, well, get your work in. And then obviously we flew out to Amsterdam as well, and we just missed him.
I remember, because you put on your Instagram, and I was like, where are you?
You're like, do you want to come to a show? And we're like, yeah. And we were like, oh no, hold on. Who's he? Oh, it's Slaves. Oh my God. Yeah. I'm very grateful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was a long tour. We were on that tour for 5 and a bit months. So it's become a bit of a blur of one. We were around quite a bit of the world. Totally. America, and then we're in Europe, then we're in UK, then in Europe again. So things are a bit forgetful. But that band came out and Alligator, I think they were called.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
they came out to support, and I didn't know they were doing it. I didn't know who'd supported. I hadn't bothered looking. I was just so busy. Yeah. And then I saw they were doing it, and I was like, to Laurie from Slaves, I was like, that's that band from Glasgow. And he's like, yeah, we picked them. And I was like, that's class, I'll get to see them. And then when I arrived, I think they all thought I had been like, oh yeah, just give it to my mate's band. But I was like, I had no idea, I had no part in it. And they Laurie had heard one of the songs, or Isaac had heard one of the songs, and just kind of naturally picked them up,
Amazing.
So that was quite a fun experience, because then there suddenly, I had been away for pretty much 3 months at that point. I hadn't been home. And then suddenly I had 5 Glaswegians.
Literally around you.
Just there in front of me, So, in strange parts of Germany, they did all the weird kids, they did I think Hamburg was the only major city we did. Then we were in the Czech Republic and maybe even the Ukraine or something.
They were talking about that actually, and I think
we went to Switzerland, but it was I can't even remember what it was. It wasn't even it wasn't Zurich, it was another small town. So, but that was a fun time.
Yeah, God, that was literally 3 years ago now. That's nuts to think. These are just normal experiences as well for us in the industry, and it's these sort of stories that you can come out with, oh yeah, I did that. Remember that?
I know. This is the thing as well. When I've just moved flat, and I moved in here, and I looked at I've got a box of memorabilia, I suppose. And honestly, some of the things I forgot I've done, and it's not that I forgot that I'm showing off. It's just that I've done. I've just been so busy, and you work so much. It's such a hard job that I'm oh man, I remember that time I saw Nirvana reform in California in the desert, with the Foo Fighters and Patti Smith singing, or whoever it was, and Francis Bean was there, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that happened, as if I just forget,
It's a fever dream when you describe it like that, but actually at the end of the day, that's just your reality. And then obviously this is the magic of the work of the music industry. These things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you talk me through what is a backline tech so what do you actually do? What is role? Because a lot of another thing with it is there's so many different titles in the music industry, and a lot of these things that we're all meant to know, but we don't really know.
So backline is what you would describe, instruments are backline basically. So that's the industry word for it. So if you're with a band and you're traveling, you would maybe bring your own backline. Or if you were doing it and the venue was supplying it, they would supply backline. So that's basically what it is. So a backline tech's a kind of generalization of someone that will deal with the backline. And generally, if you say that, you're dealing with more than one part of it. So, as you get a bit bigger and you tour with, you work with more crew, you'll have someone that's a guitar tech and a drum tech and a keyboard tech, or, whatever it is, But generally, you just say backline as you're dealing with more than one person, and that's the kind of reality of it. You don't have to be a master of everything. No one's expecting you, like, until you're touring and doing stadiums and arenas, and even then, as long as you're learning, you just have to be competent, and you have to be, work through what you do. I think the best way I can describe it is being like methodical. So a lot of it is plugging the same thing in and putting it in the same place every night, just in a different venue. So that's the kind of part of it. So basically what I do is set up the equipment for the band, for them, so that they can come and sound check. Bands don't generally lift or move stuff themselves. That's what I get paid to do. Which is a good and a bad thing. Maintain it, so like when we're on the road, things get broken, there's just general jobs that need done, like guitars need new strings, drums need new skins, things need cleaned, things get broke. We've all seen bands play, they throw stuff about, you have accidents and stuff, I've dropped guitars, I've dropped very expensive guitars and they've cracked and stuff, and it's either down to me to do to glue it, say, or to get it to the right person and, get it sorted. And fortunately, I've never done anything that's been unfixable or anything that's been overly annoying. Like the band, it's been like terminal for them and they've been really angry at me. But things happen, mistakes happen. But generally, as a backline tech, your job is to oversee, make sure the instruments work, make sure they're all plugged in, make sure that anything that breaks gets fixed, or if you can't fix it, get it to the person that can fix it. Set up the equipment, watch the gig. You've got to be very, focused on it, because if musicians are performing, so they're not just necessarily standing in one spot doing nothing. So things get pulled out, things get kicked, things get, caught on bits. There's nothing worse than when a musician's trying to, if you're watching a band and you see the guitar player go to do his big guitar solo and his lead gets caught and he can't walk into the light where he's meant to be, and nobody's watching to go and fix it. So that's basically my job, is to go and give them their moment in the light. And that's kind of the best way that's what I would describe to be a very key part of it, is like to make them as comfortable as possible, to let them perform the best they can every single night. So they know, like, when you give them a guitar, it will be in tune, it will be set up, ready to go. I've got some very specific examples that if we can look at, if we want to talk about it, of like, so like when I was out with Slaves, the last tour I did with Slaves, with the first 3 songs were like back to back. We tried to have as small a pause as possible, but we were changing from a guitar to a bass guitar to a guitar. So I would have normally you would give the guitar with the volume turned down, so that if they bump it, it doesn't just make a noise. But with that, we were doing it so quickly because they wanted, like literally to go into the song, that I would have to have it ready. So I had to hold it in a certain way. I had to come up with a way with the guitarist to hold it, so that literally I could like hold the other one, put it over his head, and he could just plug straight in and hit the first note. And literally, by the end of the tour, we had it down to like, we did it at the last gig of the tour, we did it was Alexandra Palace. And I think honestly, we did the whole change in maybe under 2 seconds. Like we were so seamless at it. Like I was basically lifting it over his head while holding the other guitar above mine and just like dropping it onto his shoulder, and he would plug it in. And then just as it hit his shoulder, he would hit the first note and they would just go. And then again, we would do it off of it, so it just had to be so seamless. But, you've just got to make it comfortable. So that's how they wanted the first 3 songs to run seamlessly, like to not have a gap. And so we just had to come up with a way to do it, and that's my job. I've just got to, it's not doing what they tell you to do, but you've got to be able to facilitate the ideas of an artist. And that's what the big part of it is,
It's a very important job as well. I mean, Christ, I remember because you do feel awkward for musicians when it doesn't go right on stage for them. I remember we were actually, I think it was when we were in Amsterdam, and we were there to see the Growlers, and we were actually, where we were standing, it was like a 2-story kind of venue, so we were right up top, and we managed to sort of stand into sort of left and sort of above the stage almost. So it was where we could obviously get standing, us to get a wee seat as well. And then we saw like one of the cables like not work, one of the guitars, and it really did affect the performance. And they still kind of kept trying to sort of play it. I think the sort of like backline tech was a bit slow, or wasn't there to be seen for like the first 3 seconds. So it was like, oh my God, where is he? We've noticed this is not going right. We're feeling awkward. We're like, oh God, is he going to do it? Are they not? Like, and obviously eventually he ran on and they managed to fix it. But it's just that sort of, you feel for them, because it's obviously like at the end of the day, musicians try and obviously make their performances as best as they can. That's what they love doing.
Yeah.
So if something goes wrong, you can totally throw things.
I think that's it as well. It's like you know, there's things there's some things that go wrong that like don't necessarily need to, the performance is the whole part of it. That's what it's all about. And whether that's the performance from the artist's point of view or from the crowd's point of view, it's both kind of separate things. You know, because I've done plenty of gigs where we've all come off stage and thought it was terrible, but that the crowd have absolutely loved it, you know, and like for whatever reason, we've not enjoyed it, myself or the band, but the crowd have been wild and have been tweeting and Instagram saying it's the best gig they've ever seen, you know. So there's two separate bits of it, but there's bits where, like, you know, I've done another example with Slaves is there's bits of songs that are really, really intense, and maybe the drummer would, like, you know, hit the cymbal and it would flatten off, so he couldn't hit it again. But he didn't want me to come on at that point because he didn't want, I would have to stand in front of him to fix it. Yeah. But he doesn't want, you know, I'm quite a big guy. He doesn't want me standing in front of him while he's in this real intense moment with the audience. So there's bits like that, you know, the artist will adapt to stuff. They will fix it themselves, you know, or they'll give you a sign. You've just got to be aware. It's almost like, you know, you've got to tune a guitar, but you've got to be able to look onto the stage. So you've got to find a way to do it. And yeah, so like that is a really big part of it. You've got to look after, you're almost looking after the audience and the artist. And you've got to work for both. Obviously, you work for the artist, but you know, I could easily make mistakes that could ruin gigs. You know, I've had some moments that haven't been great. Fortunately, nothing's been too bad. You know, I've had a couple of bad gigs. I've had bad gigs all the time. You get bad gigs, that happens.
Totally.
But I've had a couple of mistakes that, you know, have not been good, but they're able to bounce back and fix it, and the artist has been understanding. So
yeah. And at the end of the day, maybe the audience don't actually notice or know. But
well,
obviously
that's another part of the artist's element of the gig is a lot of time they'll come off and they'll be like, oh, you know, I hit that one note wrong in the chord and the solo, and then it's like nobody in the crowd. Other than that one guy at the back who's like an absolute shredder on the guitar that knows everything inside out, that can already play the song better than the artist. Nobody, you know, nobody cares. But that's who it is, because everyone's so critical of themselves. It's such a high standard, that industry. So yeah.
Totally. I mean, it also relates to when like you're working as an artist manager, like, you know, when your band haven't played as good a gig, because not only do you sort of feel it off them off stage that they're a bit scunnered, they're a bit like, oh god, no, it didn't go right. Yeah. You kind of know that some of the songs weren't great, maybe something went wrong.
Oh yeah.
But then it's obviously your job almost, or at least I found, was like to almost reassure them and be like, no, it's fine. Almost lie to them, because, you know, like, it's just one gig, it doesn't really matter. They played very well. The crowd was amazing. Maybe the industry people there were like really impressed, so, you know, you almost have to lie to them to kind of build them up, and it's perfectly fine. I've done that before, actually. I
think that's a big part of, there's a lot of jobs in the touring industry, you know, there's a lot of jobs, and there's not many, I mean, maybe other than like tour manager, maybe personal security at the highest level, that get to spend a lot of closer time with the artist and being a backline or being a technician for, you know, a guitar tech, whatever it is. And a lot of that's something you've got to become good at. You've got to make relationships quickly, but you've also got to be able to work out how you can help. Because, you know, I know sometimes some artists I've worked for don't want to hear it. You know, they don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And you just have to learn that's how you deal with it. You know, they'll bring it up when they want to. You know, a lot of the time the next day at sound check, they'll maybe be, you know, see that wee bit last night, can we try this, or, you know, try this different. Some people want to talk about it all night. They want to get on the tour bus and they want to sit and drink 4 beers and just talk about it non-stop, and that's fine. That's how they deal with it. And at the end of the day, you know, I'm only really there to deal with it unless it's been an issue I've made the mistake, then maybe I need to deal with it my way. But it's up for me just to support. You're almost just supporting. That's what you're constantly doing. Constantly find a way to support the artist's needs, and that can be anything. You know, I've tied shoelaces on stage. I've taken sunglasses off. I've wiped sweat out of people's eyes. I've held somebody while they popped their dislocated shoulder back in, you know, in case he passed out. Like, so, you know, like it literally is, every single night is different, and that's the best thing about this job. But it is also one of the hardest things to deal with, because every single night is different. You're in a different room every night. You don't know how it's going to fit. You don't know how, you know, you don't know what the dynamic's going to be. So, you know, that's the kind of big part. But yeah, the kind of broad aspect of the backline tech is you're taking care of the instruments, and you've probably got the most face-to-face time with the artist in terms of like the live performance. You know, in theory, in in reality, I'm probably the only person that speaks to them for the 2 hours that they're on stage. So if they've got a message they need to convey to anyone, it can be, I've had people tell me to tell their partner that they love them, or like people tell me, to tell the sound guy to fix something or whatever. I've got to be able to take it all in, process it, and give them it out. So yeah, it's a good job. It's probably, as I move on, there's other things I'm doing, but it's my bread and butter, and that's what I love doing. And it is special to make a special bond. Even when you do a one-off, I've covered like Lewis Capaldi, stuff like that. I've done Always and stuff. I've covered in these bands, and you still manage to get it. If you get it good, you still manage to get that connection with the person, even though I only meet them for one night, and I've half of them I've never spoke to again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. So, okay, actually sort of relates to what you also said there. So sort of talk me through your work as a tour manager then. How does that differ to some of the backline tech stuff you've done?
So I think when I first started out, when I wanted to do the backline tech stuff, I was like, tour manager's maybe the overall goal, because it seems like tour manager basically is almost just overseeing up to a point, and then it changes. So up to a point, the tour manager is kind of head of the tour. And then you get into a bigger size where you maybe add other roles like a production manager and stage managers and stuff, So the tour managers say that they're the top of the tour for the majority of the work that people do up to a very big point. So they're overseeing hotels, buses, trains, flights, whatever, transport, logistics, accommodation. They're overseeing. They're the people that will tell me. It's the tour manager that will get in touch with me and say, right, this tour starts on Friday the 31st, you got to be in Manchester at 9 a.m. Do you want me to book a train, or do you want to book a train? Whatever. Here's your hotels, here's that, and that's. So when I did it, I kind of did it as like a route into the industry, and it's something I thought I wanted to do. And the further I got in, the more I actually realised that I don't have the patience to deal with that at the highest level, because it's such a high pressure job. I mean, like literally, I'm fortunate. Every artist I've worked with is very good, and that's not me just saying that because I work for them and they might see. They might see this and fire me. No, I've not worked with anyone that's been like hugely demanding. Everyone's got their demands in their own rights, but I've heard of people, like where they've decided. I know somebody that tour managed a band, and they were in Switzerland playing a festival, and halfway through the band's headline set, it was like half 1 a.m, and the singer walked over to the tour manager at the side of the stage and told him he wanted to fly home to London that night, and he was to organise a plane. So tour manager had to go and book a private plane for him to take him home because he wanted to go and see his girlfriend. And that was it, So there's a different level, but basically I'm rambling a bit there. But yeah, so basically I got into tour manager was another facet. And when you start, the level you start at and the smaller gigs you do, bands can't, when they start paying people, they can't afford to have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 crew. So generally people double up. So you maybe find that front a sound engineer will double up. Generally the two roles are a backline tech and a sound engineer. One of them will be the tour manager. And then that's how it starts evolving from there. So I'm quite good at logistics. I'm quite organised person. I can kind of run that. So I did that at a small level. So I did loads of small stuff like Baby Strains, TY Bibles. I'm trying to think who else. Biggest thing I probably tour managed was Into the Arc, who were the runners up in The Voice in 2016, but it might have been 17. I tour managed them for like 3 tours, and it was pretty good. What they should have won The Voice in my opinion. They were brilliant.
Yeah.
We got to do that tour after The Voice. We played like a sold out 40 gig tour, and the venues got upgraded to like, some of them were like 700-800 people. So that was a great experience, But tour managers are pretty hard. It's basically you're up to the very biggest gigs. You're basically the final stop for everything. So if somebody's forgot to bring something, it generally falls to the tour manager to help organise it. If the band want to go somewhere, tour manager organises it. If the crew need to go somewhere, the tour manager has to do it. So it's you are managing the tour, and then you've also got to deal with the finances of it. So you'll be counting the money, any merchandise money, any money coming from promoters. Then liaising with the manager to then do to do budgets and stuff. So there's a lot. Tour management is a really big job, and I thought it was a much simpler job until I got further into the industry. And then the first time I toured with a proper tour manager, I was like, wow, like that, that is one of the best jobs in the world, but you have to be very good at it. And it's maybe not something I can give the best advice on. I can maybe certainly at the lower level, would be capable of giving tips to to be organised and, you know, be able to do gigs and ways to find cheap hotels and good. I can tell you every good service station in the world.
Yeah.
You know, in Britain. But stuff like that makes a big difference. See, when you're in a van with 6 other people and you've shared 2 hotel rooms and you've been out for 3 weeks, you've been able to stop at a nice service station and get a good hot meal rather than another Burger King or a Greg's. It makes a huge difference, and that's all the wee secrets that tour managers always have. You know, I know tour managers that like literally like I could phone a friend, Tom, a tour manager just now, and I could ask him where the best place to get ramen is in any city in America, and he'd be able to tell me 3 places, you know. And that's just what he does. He's so good at it, you know.
Yeah.
He knows everything, and that's part of his role, because a lot of time you've got to organise food, you've got to do stuff. So you maybe bands of guests coming along and they're like, oh, we want to go out for dinner, so can you find somewhere and book a table and, you know, do that. So it's a pretty hardcore role being a tour manager. It starts out, it's quite good to have a basic knowledge of it, but the higher you go, the harder it gets.
The more mental it is, I suppose. Yeah, but again, that just comes with everything with this industry. Every single role, the high levels are, you know, are are mental. The sort of lower levels that, you know, maybe you start out in are kind of fun, and, you know, it does feel like as though you're just traveling around with like a group of mates and just having a grand old time.
And that's something that's good to have. And also, I mean, they're mad in their own way, because like I've done tours where I've been tour manager and backline guy, you know, and it's a lot of work to do in a day, and you don't get as much time in a small venue. You know, if you're playing a pub, say you're playing like Nice and Sleazy's in Glasgow, they're not going to let you into maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So you've got to get set up, sound check, sort your merch, sort your dinner, you know, whatever it is, all in maybe 4 hours. Whereas like on the last tour I did with Gerry, we started loading in at 6 a.m. and didn't finish loading out to maybe 3 a.m. You know, so we've also got more work to do, but we've also got more time to sort stuff. So something that broke the night before, if he broke something on a guitar the night before, I knew I had 8 hours before sound check to fix it. Whereas at a lower level, you maybe only get 10 minutes at a venue. So you really got, you know, it changes the dynamic, and it changes what you have to do and what you have to be capable of. But yeah, that's the basis. That's the most I can say about TMing.
I suppose at the end of the day, it's good practice doing the smaller venues and working, you know, on the sort of basic level, because then it means like, eventually you do get to the stage where you have 8 hours to sort of
definitely,
time to time.
You need to be able to see things happening. You know, I could sit with someone and tell them 100 times about a guitar strap breaking, you know, or the pin of a guitar, you know, like this part. Here's one I made earlier, but this part of the guitar come out, okay?
Yeah.
But see, until that happens on a stage, when there's 10 people or 10,000 people in front of you, like until that happens, you can't be prepared. So you have to have it happen in small pubs where there's only 10 people there, so that the next time it happens and there's 30 people there, you can do it better. You know, that's what it's all about. That's what the whole growth route in the industry is about. It's just doing it from a small level to a big level. It's the same job. It just gets bigger. You just get more to do. You just get more guitars. You just whatever it is. But you just have to be able to grow, and that's what the important part. That's what getting experience is about.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I think is that's what you'll never be able to teach without giving people practical chances to do it. So that's why you've got to do it. You know.
That's exactly it. Totally.
Yeah. There's no options.
So obviously I did troll through your LinkedIn to find out exactly what your entire work history was. So what did you actually do as a merchandise manager then? So
merchandise manager is basically the fancy word for just selling t-shirts and the merch. So I've done a fair bit. Like I did one tour with a band called Killing Joke. Do you know them? Kind of like I want to say late 70s, early 80s punk band, a very iconic band, you know, huge. We did a tour, a headline tour with them, and then we went out and supported Guns N' Roses for like 2 weeks. So basically, I was just in charge of the merch. So it's my job to keep track of the stock, sell it. You know, if we have to get local sellers in to organise that, keep track of the money, bank the money. You know, if we're out on a tour and something's selling well and we're going to sell out, I have to make sure I order enough of it in advance. You know, so say like we're playing Glasgow tonight and then we're playing London on Tuesday. So, and at the end of tonight, I count the merch out and I go, I've only got 10 black t-shirts left. I'm gonna need 50 for London. So it's my job to make sure that tomorrow morning I phone the merch company and I say, can you ship me 50 black t-shirts to this venue in London, please? So that's kind of part, as much as it's about the selling, it's about the kind of organising of it to basically, merch is such a huge income stream for bands, like it's massive. So there's nothing worse. I've been on tours where you have a really bad merch guy and you go and look at the merch. I'll go and have a look every so often just to see what the band have a lot of the time. I'm like, you wear merch all the time. And that's the best bit about being on tour. And you'll go and you'll be like, oh, wow, they only got one t-shirt. And he's like, oh, no, I've sold out the rest. And you're like, well, you've sold out of it, so surely you would sell more. So there's nothing worse than that, because that can really affect the bottom line for a band. And it's not all about money, but money is important to touring. It's how we do it. We need money to do it, and we need to make money. It has to be viable. So a good merchandise manager is able to project, the best. I've got a friend that literally has been merchandise manager for like massive bands. He's ended up now. He's now tour managing Interpol.
Oh wow!
He's moved all the way up, but he's been merchandise manager and then like tour manager's assistant, moved through. But like honestly, like I can phone him, and so it was him that gave me this Killing Joke tour. So we were doing a venue in the Czech Republic, and I was quite low on one size of t-shirt, and I was going to get an order, and I phoned him and I was like, right, I'm low on this. What do you think? And he was like, okay, at best you'll sell 10 t-shirts in that venue. Never sell any t-shirts there. The merch position's in a terrible part of the venue. It's got no fruit fall through it, so don't worry about it. End of the night, he texts me, he goes, how many did you sell? And I'm like, 10 t-shirts. And he's like, I told you, So the best guys can literally predict, like, based on the venue, like what's worth having, what's doing. So it's, it's quite a high pressure role, because a lot of time you're handling cash. I had some nights in that tour where I maybe had like €5,000 or €6,000 in cash. Mm-hmm. So you've got to be on top of that, because, nobody wants a reputation of, oh, he keeps giving me the money and it's £20 down, because you have to count the merch in and out every day. Yeah. And at the end of the tour, the company who have paid for it in advance need to be paid. Mm-hmm. And they'll be like, well, why is there 10 t-shirts missing? That's 200, that's £300.
Yeah.
Where is that? And that might come out of the band's money. So you've got to be very thorough and courteous. And it's probably the only, in fact it is, as far as I can think, the only role in this industry where you actually have to deal with the public. So.
Oh, actually, that's very, very true, actually. Yeah, and obviously merchandise is really important for artists and stuff as well, especially the sort of deals in that, especially the bigger bands that are taking with record labels, whether it's a 360 deal that, they take money out of their merchandise, or maybe they have a sort of setup where maybe any merchandise money they make on tour, the band keep themselves. I remember, interestingly enough, I think it was I went to see Middle Kids, and we went up to sort of same at the end of the gig, because did that thing where they stood in the merch table and went, we just want to say, oh, thank you very much, we flew from Glasgow to see you. And we asked them, like, do we buy a record here, would you rather that, or do you want us just to buy one through your website? And they were like, can you please like buy it here? And I was like, okay, yeah. So basically wanted that for the petrol money, which is totally fair enough. So it is an important job.
It is like a lot of the time, like I've done tours where when bands start out and they're supporting bands that say, like, even like, so use like Nice and Sleazy as an example again, the headline band aren't going to be getting paid that much money even if they sell it out. So the support band are maybe getting £50 a night. So that's not even going to cover your van, your fuel, your hotel, food, So selling 5 t-shirts and making another £50 that night can be life-changing. And I've done tours where we've been out for 3 weeks as a support band, and the fee's been maybe £500 for the 3 weeks, but then we've made £2,000 in merch. So that's paid for nicer hotels, or not nicer hotels, but hotels and vans, and so it's such a fundamental part to it. And actually finding someone that's good at it and being good at it it's such an overlooked role in this industry. A lot of people just think, oh, they're just selling a t-shirt. It's just a t-shirt, but actually there's so much more to it. Like there is a sales element to it, and there's a customer service, and a lot of the time you actually become the face. The merch person actually becomes the face of the band. Because it's actually only contact with the band, other than maybe on social media or if they meet them outside, that a punter gets. So a lot of time you get given a wee, like a CD or a present or whatever. So, and people really put a lot of trust in you to do it.
Yeah, and like you said, like, a lot of bands and sort of tours and that always do, well, not always, but sometimes do look for local sellers. There's been times when, I've sat in the sort of like Glasgow pages, or I've seen people post saying, like, is anyone available to come help sell merch during this? And sometimes you don't know what band it is, but sometimes, it could be an opportunity for you to also make a bit of money.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, before I went proper full time, I used to do quite a lot of that, particularly at the ABC. I used to work at ABC as a PR, handing out flyers and stuff, doing a bit of box office. So I had a decent relationship with them. So they would offer me, maybe phone and say, can you come in from 4 o'clock to midnight and sell with the person, the touring person, and it made it £100 sometimes, some of them were £150, which is, a lot of money, like at any time of the, but when you're trying to break into an industry where money's not necessarily forthcoming, being able to take those opportunities. And also, there's times I haven't been able to do it because I've been working, I've been busy, I've been touring, doing my own job, but I still get phone calls from a few of those people that I went and did that with when they're coming to Glasgow saying, we're in Glasgow next week, do you want to come along, come and see me and work? And some of them, I became really good friends with a couple of them, so it's pretty, it's an important role, but it's something I've not done a huge amount of other than the local selling, but it's something that it can be a great route into the industry for people, particularly people that don't want to be a backline guy or a backline tech. It can be a great route into it, going and selling t-shirts with their friends' bands or getting onto a tour. Like I said, I've got a friend who started as a merch guy. I mean, don't get me wrong, he toured with huge arena bands, stadium bands, but worked his way up through kind of assistant roles that exist in the industry, and is now going to imagine one of the biggest bands, that have been out of New York in 25 years or something, 30 years. I think I know what he's going on to next, but I don't really want to go on and say what he's going on to next. But he's going on to probably tour manage one of the most iconic solo acts of all time next year. If it happens, if obviously given COVID, but that was his way in. He didn't want to be a battling guy. He never did that, so that was his way into it. So it's a really important route for people to think about. If you don't try and be a technician if you don't want to be, because it's pointless.
Yeah.
Find the other ways in, and it might seem slower and it might not seem as direct, but actually, in reality, when bands start getting bigger, they generally pick a friend to be their merch guy, and then if you get to go out on those first gig and you're good, when they get a bit bigger again and there's more money, they're not good. It's not like there's just merch guys sitting about all the time, so they're probably just going to go, do you want to just come and do this? And it's a really great route into it. I think it's really important and it's overlooked a lot of the time, but I would tell people to consider it.
And you can always, with these opportunities and stuff, again, there's Facebook groups or Facebook sort of pages and that set up for all sorts of aspects.
Oh, yeah.
So there are actual merchandising groups as well.
Yeah.
That are international, but the way it works is whenever there is someone, say, touring, maybe they're in Glasgow, they'll post, be like, hi, I'm in Glasgow, would anyone be up for maybe coming to help out with merch and stuff? And that's how I've saw these opportunities. Maybe I've not taken them, but I've been like, actually you could totally do that, out with also practicing with your friends, and say your friends playing at work, you could be like, do you need someone to sell your merch? I'll go do it for 2-3 hours, pay me 20 quid and I'll be there. And
absolutely. A few years ago, I can't remember the band. There was a tour. I think it was at Alien Ant Farm in Papa Roach or something like that. They were doing a tour together in the ABC, and I went and did the merch on it, and then the merch guy basically said, there was 3 other Scottish guys, and he was like, do you want to just come and do the rest of them with us? But I couldn't. I was actually going on to a tour at the time of my own, but that would have been a great opportunity. A year before, that would have been one of the biggest things I had ever done, and it would have been so massive for me to get it. So you learn a lot doing it as well. It's quite a difficult job. So
definitely. And again, the next question I sort of had here also relates to all the other sort of questions you've answered, obviously, with all your other roles. So what's the difference between sort of backline tech and a stage manager for a band?
Yeah, so that's kind of the difference becomes when the industry progresses. So at the top level, a stage manager is just a stage manager, and they will oversee from the start of the day to the end of the day, whatever, not necessarily, they're not necessarily building the lights, but they're there making sure that the light team are okay and they have enough crew that they need. So we'll get local crew in who literally just there for that one day, and they have to be divided up. So at some points in the morning, so one team will maybe need 15 at say 9 a.m. But then at 10 a.m. they only need 2. But the video team might need 20. So you can, it's kind of overseeing and moving that, making sure the trucks get packed in the right order, the stuff goes in the right trucks. But I'm still doubling up on it, mainly because with Gerry Cinnamon, stage manager and guitar tech, But mainly with Gerry, he's on his own. It's just him, so I can do that. I can, it's not like I have 4 or 5 musicians to deal with. So I can be a bit more versatile. Plus, also the team that we have there from suppliers from Adlib and I can't remember the PA supplier now, Wigwam. They're amazing. So we know that we can trust them. They run their stuff their way, and we know they'll get it in the right time every single day. We've worked with them for a long time. Adlib in particular, we've been with the 2 guys, our 2 main guys, our crew bosses. We've been with for like 2.5 years, and they're amazing. So that makes that role easier. But yeah, so basically, a lot of the time, what happens is when bands start touring, say to like academy-sized venues. So generally in the industry, we go like pubs, clubs, academies, arenas. That's how we just generally kind of word it, and that can vary. There's some academies that are 5,000, 8,000. There's some that are 800. So at that sort of level, you need somebody just to kind of oversee where the support bands go, where they set stuff up, where So generally, it either generally falls to the backline tech that's got the least to do, or the most senior one. So like some guys, so like I've done, like with Slaves, they've got 2 drums and 2 cymbals, and that took me half an hour to change the skins and set them up. So there was no reason for me not to when the guitar tech had 10 guitars and 10 amps to deal with. So that's how I kind of took into that role. And then just by chance, when I became the guitar tech, I was just the most senior member of crew, and it just felt right for me to continue doing it. So there's less of a role there. There's less to do. It's just more making sure that support bands come off stage at the right time, that you get on stage at the right time, supporting anyone else that needs it. But a stage manager out that, and that's where I kind of want my career to progress to, is seeing from the first truck to the last truck, making sure everything runs. Kind of you're not managing other departments because they're so on top of what they're doing, and I don't have the expertise to go in and tell them, oh, do this way. But it's just making sure that if you can support them, like if they need extra bodies, or if they need just an extra hand, sometimes I just jump in and help them. They're a bit behind, so we'll just go and put some lights up and cable them. So that's the kind of big difference. Like there isn't you basically wouldn't touch any instruments. You would just oversee the day, oversee the running. But also there'll be lots of other people to do it. So you're just kind of the man in the middle, making sure that the small things don't get overlooked, and making sure that the things that fall between departments just get done when they need to be done, and done on the right time, So yeah, but that's kind of where, hopefully, ideally, that's where I would like to see myself going. Which, it's getting there. It definitely is getting there. I think there's a lot more work to do because it's at such a high level to be there. So, like obviously, like some people might, I know people that look at me and say, oh, you've made it, you've done what you want to do, but man, I'm trying so hard to get to where I want to go, so that's the whole thing about this industry. You've just always got to learn, always got to work. It's such a hard work job. But if you're willing to put in the time and the effort, then you can be successful,
I mean, totally, and I suppose it also goes back to that saying that I always live by as well. Like, if you're the smartest person in the room, then change rooms.
Especially 100. That's such a good saying. 100%. Like you need to be able to. The whole industry. There's too many people that get into this industry and get a half decent job, and then think they know everything. And I've been there, and I've had the fallouts with them, and everyone has their own ego, and you fall out and you argue with each other, and then you walk away, and then I'm always the bigger man, or I try to be. So 10 minutes later, you walk back up, and you're like, I'm sorry, mate. But too many people get into a job and they get comfortable, and they think they know everything, and they're not willing to learn. But it's not even not being willing to learn. It's been not willing to listen to other people's opinions, and that's such a big should be part of any life, and you're right, if there's nothing you can learn, then just find something else and learn it. I think that's the best way to do it. Like, you've always got to be on top, and this is such a dynamic and fast-paced industry. Things change all the time, so
totally. Like, and you're constantly learning, constantly, compared to like maybe what people involved in the sort of work that we were involved in like 20 years ago would have had to learn. Like, it's like the basics for everything that we do now. I mean, obviously you're involved with the sort of technological side of it, the more physical side of it, but I'm finding this as well, like being involved in sort of digital social media and sort of PR and marketing. Absolutely. Like the skills that I learned like 5 years ago, like at Christ, aren't even relevant necessarily anymore, or more like, you should already know this, here's the new thing that everyone's learning.
100%. I remember doing a session with Slaves where we recorded a cover of a song with Captain Conan, the grime act, and the Slaves producer came along to produce it. It was for some, I can't remember, a brand. So, but he came along and I was talking to him about it, and we were just talking about how he'd taken a bit of time to learn what he'd missed while he'd been so busy with work. And he was telling me, there's stuff like people like, even stuff like 5 years ago, it never happened, but now he's telling me that, producers are doing a mix of a song and they're buying 10 different types of headphones to listen to it on, just to listen to it, so he's like, I'm listening on Apple headphones and then on ones that come with a Samsung, and I'm listening on Beats, and he's like, and 5 years ago that would have, like, someday they would have laughed at you if you said, oh, how does it sound on Apple AirPods? But now he's like, that's it, a good producer does it, and that's what the whole industry is, from the very bottom to the very top. It's always changing, and you've always got to be ready to learn it. I've had stuff thrown on me where, like, 2 days before a gig, one band said to me, they were like 2 days before a gig, they decided they wanted to play, there's a song on their album that has some keyboards in it, and they're like, we want a keyboard. So I had to go and find the keyboard, buy it, set it up, work out, get their sounds from the producer onto it, work out how we were going to adapt it into the live set, where it could fit, where it could go. And then in the end, they never played it once. But yeah, honestly, like 2 days of absolute stress of, trying to learn everything I could about the keyboard, so that, like, no matter what, if it broke, I could fix it,
Yeah.
And then literally it never once came out the truck for the whole tour. So, but that's the job. That's my job. That doesn't matter. I couldn't say to them, oh, what a waste that was, because at the end of the day, it's their money and that's my job. If they tell me to learn it, I've spent a lot of time, like, you got to kind of stay ahead of things. So I spent a lot of time when updates are coming out, just trying to learn, like, your software and that. So it's such a big part of it. You've got to be willing to learn.
Yeah. Okay, this is the kicker question, but again, we do, what's coming. We do have to talk about it. It's still very, very relevant to everything that we're doing. So how has COVID affected you?
Yeah, so yeah, it's very relevant, isn't it? I don't think there's actually probably nothing more relevant than that.
Yeah.
So COVID's not been great. Obviously, we kind of lost the whole industry for a bit. I was meant to start probably the start of April. Well, the first gigs were the end of April, but I reckon we would have started with rehearsals and learning the new songs and stuff. Start with Gerry Cinnamon at the start of April, and that would have been me all the way to September. And then I guess he would have toured again at the end of the year. But that would have been, literally that would have been solid. We would have been in America for a month, Europe, Australia, the UK, would have been playing stadiums. So it was a massive year for me. A lot of things I wanted to achieve in my career, I was going to achieve this year. So that's all been put back. Very fortunately, it's been moved to next year. So if things go the way they're looking like they might go with the vaccines and stuff, then fingers crossed we get to do it again.
Yeah.
But I think it will just keep getting pushed to a point where it's like, what's happening. So I kind of lost a lot of work there. Well, obviously changed my financial situation. Had to go down different routes. I managed to find a job now. I'm working in a COVID testing laboratory.
Oh, okay.
So I'm on night shifts, which actually, people think night shifts are bad, and night shifts are terrible, but the hours you do in the music industry more than set you up for. I used to do, on Gerry's last tour, I was doing like 6, 7 in the morning to 2, 3 the next morning, 4 days a week, with a day off and then 4 days again. So doing 2 a.m. to midday doesn't feel that bad.
No,
which,
it's a half day.
Yeah, and you learn, and that's another thing that the industry gives you, is it gives you the ability to, there's a lot of transferable skills and a lot of transferable areas, and it's great. But yeah, COVID, that's basically been my year with COVID. I've taken a very liberal approach to it in my mind, where I'm so thankful every day, even before COVID, I was so thankful for what I managed to do with my life, what I've achieved, what I was going to get to do. If things didn't happen in the right way again, if things had to move off for years and years, then great. I've done I've done amazing things, but I'm ready to go. That's what I've done. I've used it. I've worked on guitars. I've worked on some things I wanted to get better at. I've used it to just be ready,
Yeah.
And maybe in work. And maybe there was a bit of a period of lockdown where we didn't, but we all probably were there, where lockdown wasn't great. But that's my plan going into next year, is to continue working on this job and just really focus down and try and, I'm really bad at soldering. Like I'm okay. I can fix things, but I can't, like when you see a professional doing it, you see me. So I'm basically going to set up a bit in my room where I just sit and solder cables and then take them apart and solder them again. I'm just going to get better at it. I'm just going to learn, you know. So, and that's what the whole job is. The whole job is learning all the time, you know, learning from your own mistakes, but learning new things. So, yeah, that's been COVID for me.
I mean, at the end of the day, I'm very, very optimistic that we will get an industry back after this, because it's not as if people's interest in live music and events is like suddenly diminished.
Oh yeah,
when
absolutely.
A gig. It's going to come back like tenfold. In fact, I'm actually kind of worried about, you know, the amount of time I'm going to spend out as opposed to in.
Yeah,
the amount of money
that's
I'm going to spend on gig tickets and going out and stuff. So, you know, we will have everything back. It's just, you know, it's that impatient waiting game, waiting for our lives to start again. And I think when they do, we'll be so much more grateful than before.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think like I think it's been nice to spend a lot of time. This is the most I've spent at home in probably 5 or 6 years. You know, like
totally.
Obviously, most of it I spent locked in my home because of lockdown. But I think I'm at the point now where I'm ready to go away, and I think definitely my girlfriend is ready for me to go away. She's looking for an excuse for me to stop annoying her. But yeah, no, I'm optimistic. The only, obviously the only thing that changes is, you change over time, and it's whether if it takes 4 years, it's whether if I'm ready to go back to it, or if I found something else that I'm in, then that's the only way that will change for me. But yeah, fingers crossed we can do something next year, even if it's not everything. But fingers crossed we get something next year, and then we can really hammer. And I think you're right. I think when it comes, it will come back at full speed. The music industry never slows down, and for something to have stopped it is massive. And it's just sitting caged up. It's been pushed back like a spring, and it's just ready to go, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, first to shut down and last to come back, unfortunately.
And that's it. You're probably only looking at like football or something that will be on the same sort of timescale as us, in terms of like getting the full body of fans back.
Yeah.
And they're two things that people love: going to football, going to sport, going to gigs. So people will still go, like you say. It's not like suddenly people have forgot. Oh, remember gigs? They were good. People are waiting to go.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But
so, what are your sort of general tips for, say, anyone that's quite young and would love to get into doing what you're doing? Like, what would you suggest? Like, what would you say?
Definitely, I think this is the important part of everything I've said, because when I started, there was nothing. There's still no manual. There isn't a manual. It's not a job that you can have a manual for. I think education is good. Going into education, I don't know what the views of everyone is, but going into education is good. But if you go into education in a role that's based on live events, don't expect to come out and just jump in to something right away. You have to learn. You can only learn on the job. So my biggest advice is, no matter what you decide to do, is to always try and learn, to take every opportunity you get. If somebody, if you see somebody that's playing a gig that ask them to go and help, even if it's just to go and help, like lift the stuff out the car into the venue. Just go and get yourself in the environment and learn. There's so much stuff on YouTube. YouTube is an amazing resource now. Like, I feel like such an old man saying that, but like literally, I genuinely think there's probably, short of maybe like surgery, and then even then, I don't think there's anything you can't learn from YouTube. And I've learned almost everything I know either from YouTube or people that I work with. And you get to meet people you work with by getting into the industry, by learning from things like YouTube. There's so many great resources. Just try stuff. Don't be afraid to try it. If you can afford to, if you want to be a technician, so I'll go down maybe more specific route, because that's what I've done. If you want to do that and you can afford to, don't rip apart your nice guitar that you own. But, go to a charity shop. A good one is, if you're in Glasgow, go to the West End and there's a shop called Relics. And you'll probably find a guitar in there for between £10 and £20 in various states of repair. And take it apart and learn to build it. You don't have to be brilliant at it, but just learn the bits. Learn to string guitars well. Learn all the tricks of the trade. There's so many things that you don't know about until you do it. So just try and be on top of stuff. Be good at what you can. Nobody's expecting you. You're not going to go to your first gig and be perfect. You're not going to get your first big gig and be perfect. You're not going to get your last big gig and be perfect. But people expect you to know what you can and learn what you need to. I honestly, I have sat fixing. I did a gig with Gerry Cinnamon in Dublin, and the pickup in his guitar broke, and like we were like an hour away from soundcheck, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I literally sat with my laptop Googling and YouTube and stuff to fix it, and I fixed it, you know. And I had a rough idea, but I didn't know that it was a really old part, and I'd never seen it done that way before. And I literally sat on YouTube watching videos till I fixed it, and then put it back together and took all the credit for it, you know.
100%.
But that's what you got to do. Like, these things are always there. You know, you probably couldn't do it during a gig, but then, to be honest, there's not many things during a gig you can't. But biggest part is ask people, speak to people, try and help your friends' bands, try and get involved at the grassroots level. Nobody's going to give you a shot. Nobody's going to let you go in and start doing huge, big gigs. You've just got to learn yourself. Get a good reputation. At the end of the day, all you have is your reputation. And that counts as both your skills at your job and your personality. And that's the biggest advice I can give you. Just create a good reputation for yourself by being good at your job, by being a good person, by being good to be around, because you spend so much time. A tour bus is a luxurious apartment compared to other places, but in terms of, like, I've lived on tour buses for months at a time, and you sleep 2 foot apart, and believe me, you don't want to sleep 2 foot away from someone you don't like, and if they don't like you, they won't ask you back, and that's the reality of it. So you just got to be prepared, network, and practice.
Yeah, no,
that sounds expensive, but if you put them on, you can unwind them. No matter what anyone tells you, people tell you can't do stuff like this, but don't listen to them. Unwind them, take them off, put them back on. Unwind them, take them back off. Just do it. Do it loads of times. You know, break something if you want. If you're that way inclined like me, just break something. You know, pull a bit out of the guitar and try and work out what you need to do to fix it.
Yeah,
that's what I did. That's how, you know, that worked for me. I'm a very visual learner, so some people aren't. Read, but yeah, that's my biggest advice: is just try and get involved at the small level and work your way up, make a reputation for yourself, and learn. Always be willing to learn, always be willing. Don't ever, it's such a cliche, but there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Oh no.
Word question stupidly, and they might sound stupid, but if you can learn something from a question, it can't be stupid, you know? And that's what I've based my whole life on. I'm got a decent knowledge of most things in the industry because I just ask questions, just annoy people, you know? Another good route, if you want to just get involved more in the events industry in general and you don't know what you want to do yet, is look at companies as, like, we call them local crew companies. So Mad Crew would be my first choice. I think they're one of the best companies in Britain. I learned so much working for them. The owners are amazing. They're all ex-roadies, they're all ex-technic, drum techs, guitar techs, stage managers. So there's so much to learn from them. Get a job with them, they'll employ people. I don't know if they can do under 18s yet still. I think it's maybe only over 18s only.
Yeah,
but
I think so.
They can take some under 18s, but just a lot of the time the license for the venue is what stops things happening.
Yeah.
If you can get a job with one of these companies and just go and learn, even if it seems stupid, but just go and learn how to push a box right, lift a fly case, you know, watch, and then when you're at the gig, watch what the people are doing. That's what I still do it. I still go to festivals and stand at the side of the stage. You know, I've been to festivals with bands where we're headlining the main stage, and I've went and stood at the side and watched somebody else's guitar techs. I'm like, oh, what does he do? You know, and that's the way you learn stuff. That's how you learn to do things. And just try. I know it's hard, but try and be as outgoing as you can. Speak to people. Don't get in their way. See if they're trying to work. See when people are. The one biggest bit of advice I'll give you right now: if you go to a gig and somebody's trying to load in a truck, a bus, a van, whatever it is, don't speak to them because they don't want to speak to you. It's so you have to think about so many things. And that's how somebody will never give you any advice. Just wait for them to finish and say hi and ask them. And most of us will tell you. Most people are good people, you know. There's a few not older, but there's a few people that have been around the block a few times that almost don't enjoy what they do anymore. But just ask people, learn. I used to find guitar techs on Twitter and message them and be like, what should I do? You know? And this is all the advice they gave me. Ask people, learn, practice, go and help your small bands, your friends' bands, and just do it. Yeah, so that's the biggest advice I can give.
And I suppose going back to also talking about Mad Crew as well, like they post jobs from time to time. Actually, I've seen that before. But another thing with you know companies like that is you can always ask them for work experience. Who's going to turn down some free work and an opportunity to teach the skills on to to someone else? The industry is that nice that like you can ask anyone and they'll take the time to obviously show you, to explain things to you, because they remember when they were in that position at one time. And also you never know that you might end up working for them one day. They might rely on you or need you for something and vice versa. So Yeah, definitely recommend, like you said, just approaching people and, you know, be nice about it and
I think that's
ask.
what it's all about. It's just, there's not much else you can do. There's no books. They
No.
might be trying to write the books, but they're all pointless because, you know, you can learn the technical part of it, but you can't learn the job until you're doing it. And the only way you get to do it is by going and doing it. And that starts doing it at a small pub. You might feel like a bit of a fraud sometimes because you're like, oh, you know, it's a pub. But believe me, you learn so much doing it. You learn so quickly. And if you just keep getting better and you keep learning, then the chances will come, the opportunity will come. Bands make it all the time, but also you get to go and support bands, become, you know, I literally played a gig with Slaves to 8 people, and basically we hit it off and became very solid mates. And then 4 years down the line, I ended up working full time for them.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the first connect. I wouldn't have got that if I hadn't played that gig with them and we hadn't became friends. And that was how it worked out. So that comes from me being a nice person and, you know, not being fake, but being a genuine person
Yeah.
and just to be what I want to be. So I think that's really important. It's just you're trading on your name. You're always trading on your name. You know, I've got a friend who very sadly had a very good job and made a big mistake, and he's had to give up in the industry because just nobody will touch him. Because when they go, "Oh, who have you worked for before?" He knows the tour man. When if they don't really do references, you know, but most people know each other, so somebody will be like, "Oh, we're getting person X on," and he'll be like, "Oh, you know." So all you've got is your reputation. So you need to try and work to the highest standard you can, and you've got to be a good person to have people to back you up, and that's all you can do. You know. So
That's
yeah,
literally, you've literally given away like the biggest secret in the
that's
industry.
that is literally that's what we're all hiding. That's what they're all. You know, that's what I should start like a Facebook page and be like, pay £10 to know the biggest secret. You know, but that's it. Try and be a nice person and work hard. Basically, all I can give you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for taking the time to come on.